Last Tuesday, the new property manager for my Seattle apartment walked into our lobby, and my stomach forgot how to behave. It was Aaron, my quiet college crush, now holding the clipboard that controls my home. I'm a tenant in a city where rent rises like tides. He's the person who decides repairs, renewals, and late fees. Do I pretend nothing flickers or risk my safe nest? This complicated heartbeat won't let me ignore it. Not at work, not home. If this dilemma resonates, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments about heart, home, and boundaries below. I rent a modest one-bedroom on the north side of Seattle, the kind with a squeaky elevator and a view of neighbor windows. That morning, the lobby smelled like rain and copier paper because a new notice was taped to the mailboxes. It announced a new property manager effective immediately. I reached for my mail, glanced up as the door opened, and there he was, umbrella dripping, clipboard tucked against a navy jacket, smiling like memory, Aaron. My old crush walked into my building like he had always lived in my doorway. I forgot the mail in my hand. We met in college on a damp soccer field during a service project, passing out hot cocoa to spectators as a fundraiser. He borrowed my marker and drew perfect bubble letters for the banner, tongue peeking out while he concentrated. We stayed friends who liked the same campus concerts and the same quiet libraries. I always suspected he felt something too, from the way he slowed when we walked or how his eyes warmed when I laughed, but timing kept getting in the way, and graduation scattered us like birds startled by thunder. Life tugged us down different streets afterward. He shook off the rain, looked up, and saw me. For a breath, his eyebrows rose like a question. Then he smiled with that same gentle certainty that made me crush so hard back then. Aaron, I said, because sometimes names arrive before thought. Eli, he answered, and his voice put warmth in the chilly lobby. He introduced himself to the three of us standing there as the new manager, there to listen, fix what he could, and be honest about what he could not. He moved through the lobby with an easy patience, I remembered. It steadied my breath. When he disappeared into the office, the lobby felt too bright. My keys clicked too loudly, as if sound alone could give me away. I took the stairs to bleed off nerves and stood at my window, watching gray clouds stack like books across Lake Union. I told myself I was an adult, a tenant with a lease and an emergency fund and a plant that needed watering. I also told myself that sometimes life hands you a familiar face with a different set of stakes, and your heart asks a question your head cannot answer. Not right away, anyway. I escaped to the corner cafe on Broadway, a place that smells like cinnamon and ground beans and always plays older jazz. Harper slid into the seat across from me, scarf still damp from the drizzle, eyes already reading my face. "You look spooked," she said. I told her. I told her about Aaron, about the clipboard, about the college crush that never quite faded. She stirred her tea, thoughtful. "So we have two problems," she said. "Feelings and a power thing. You live there. He works there. You deserve both safety and truth." Her words settled like careful advice. Back home, the tenant portal blinked with a welcome message from Aaron. Professionally warm, outlining office hours, maintenance procedures, and a promise to return calls the same day. Reading it felt like hearing his voice in a room we used to share only in daydreams. I typed a simple reply, welcoming him to the building, adding that I was glad to see a familiar face and that I appreciated clear communication. My finger hovered before sending. When it went, my chest felt lighter. I told myself civility was safe. I told myself I could handle polite. Polite was not numb. I worked part-time at the branch library a few blocks away, shelving biographies and steering toddlers toward picture books with trains. That afternoon, I moved slowly, my mind tugging back to the lobby, to the way a simple hello had felt like a door opening and a rule book flipping open at once. Power is not an abstract to tenants. It is key fobs and late fees and quiet hours. It is knowing who to call when the heat fails. It is knowing that attraction should never decide whether a faucet gets fixed. Boundaries matter, especially for both hearts. On the bus home, I remembered the last real conversation Aaron and I had in college. We sat on the back steps of the science building at dusk, the sky pink like grapefruit. He told me he might move to California for work, and I said I might try Seattle. We promised to keep in touch, and we did for a while, trading links and song recommendations, cheering exams until the threads thinned. Senior year is a tide. It pulls you forward even when you have not learned how to swim together yet. Hope drifts, then returns, sometimes changed. Later. The next day, I found a note slipped under my door. It was a building-wide reminder about the smoke alarm check scheduled for Thursday, signed with his name and a neat flourish I recognized. When I opened my door, there he was across the hall, posting another notice. "Hey," he said, quiet, almost shy. "Hey," I echoed. "Long time?" He nodded, relief showing. "We can catch up someday," he said softly. "But I want to be clear. I will keep everything strictly professional while you are a tenant." I nodded. "I appreciate that." His boundaries sounded like kindness. The elevator stalled that week between floors like a sigh, and someone posted about it on the building forum. By afternoon, Aaron had a technician scheduled and a hand-lettered sign taped up with directions to the stairs and an apology that sounded sincere. I watched him help an older neighbor with groceries, carrying her bag up 2 flights and listening to her talk about her grandson in Tacoma. When he reached my landing, he glanced at me through the railing and waved. It felt simple and respectful. It also felt like a small light, bright, not blinding, just steady. A week later, packages went missing. In the past, the old manager scolded us like children and told us to stay home for deliveries. Aaron sent a gentle building-wide note with practical steps, arranged for a camera pointed at the lockers, and added a pickup window where he would be present. He also stood in the lobby to greet everyone by name that first evening, turning a problem into a neighborly moment. I stood nearby waiting for a book I had ordered. We talked about authors, nothing more. Respect can hold a lot inside it. It eases restless rooms. At the first tenant meeting, folding chairs lined the hall, and someone brought cookies from the bakery on Pike. Aaron greeted us, introduced his assistant, and went over fire exits and lease renewal timelines. He made space for questions without the usual defensiveness, answering with clarity even when the answers were not what we wanted. When someone asked about rent increases, he did not dodge. He showed us market data, explained options for longer leases, and gave a list of city resources for renters. When my hand raised, he listened. "Thank you," he said. "That's a helpful point." I exhaled. After the meeting, people drifted toward the cookies, and Aaron stacked chairs. I offered to help. We moved in an easy rhythm, metal folding legs snapping shut like metronomes. When we were the last 2 in the room, he spoke quietly. "It is really good to see you," he said, eyes steady. "And I want you to know, I will not cross lines here. If we ever talk about personal history, it will be outside of this role." I nodded, grateful. "I want the same," I said. The promise sat between us like a light. Steady, warm, not blinding, careful. In the days that followed, we practiced that promise without speaking about it. I waved in the lobby. He sent updates about repairs. I paid my rent on time and my compliments only to the way the heater finally stopped clanking at night. I learned how to let the air between us be neutral. I also learned that admiration can be quiet and still be true. In the elevator mirror, I watched my face learn to be calm while my pulse tapped its own rhythm. I told myself there was dignity in waiting. There was. Patience can hold a room. Then a November windstorm pushed through, and the power went out in the late afternoon, taking the elevator and the internet and most of our voices with it. Aaron went door to door with a flashlight and a battery lantern, checking on each floor, making sure everyone had blankets, water, and information. He knocked on mine. "Do you have what you need?" he asked. "I have candles," I said. "And board games," he smiled. "We have a gathering in the lobby for whoever wants company. I will make hot water on a camping stove." Somehow that sounded brave. And kind. We sat in a circle of lantern lights, strangers and neighbors passing mugs and stories. One person taught us a card game. Someone else showed a photo of her cat asleep in a laundry basket. Aaron moved quietly between conversations, keeping the kettle going, checking the time for updates. When he finally sat, it was in the chair beside me. We talked about weather and soup recipes and what to do when your phone battery dies. When the building grew softer with yawns, he walked me upstairs, flashlight angled at the floor. "Thanks," I said, "for the tea and calm." He nodded, then hesitated. My dad used to make tea during storms, he said. He said it convinced the house to hold. In the dark hallway, his face looked softer, a younger version wrapped inside the one I knew. He passed 2 years ago, he added. I moved back north to be closer to my mom. I told him I was sorry, and I meant it. Loss is a secret language, and his words translated something I had not asked. Thank you, he said. And thanks for helping people tonight. The flashlight made small constellations. We paused at my door. He did not ask, but I wanted to match his openness. I ended a long relationship last year, I said, voice steady enough. We were different about home. He wanted new cities every 6 months. I wanted a neighborhood to learn by heart. Aaron nodded like he understood more than the words. I am sorry, he said. Finding home is work. I smiled. It is. We stood there a moment without stepping closer or farther away, and then he said goodnight and went down the stairs to check the rest of the floor. Boundaries held, even in shadows, gently. The next morning, the power returned with a sputter and a cheer you could hear through the vents. Aaron sent a follow-up email thanking everyone for patience, listing what would be restocked in the lobby emergency kit and sharing links for disaster readiness. I read it twice. It felt both personal and not, which was the balance we had promised. I printed the list and taped it inside my pantry door. I made soup and carried a bowl down to Mrs. Green on 2. All day, my apartment felt less like a shell and more like shelter. Warm shelter. When the lease renewal notice hit my inbox in December, the number was higher than I hoped. Not a shock for Seattle, but numbers do not care about hope. I made a pot of tea and stared at my budget spreadsheet, then emailed Aaron to ask who could discuss options. He replied within the hour, thanking me and immediately stating he would recuse himself from my lease conversation to avoid any conflict of interest. He copied his regional colleague and offered to be present only if I wanted a support person. I exhaled. I respected him even more. Clear boundaries. The regional manager, a woman named Joy, called me the next day and walked me through options with a steady voice. She offered a slightly longer lease at a lower increase, or a transfer to another building in the same neighborhood with smaller units. She did not mention Aaron. I appreciated that. After the call, I met Harper again. We sat by the window and watched a bus splash through a puddle. What are you leaning toward? She asked. Staying means less upheaval, I said. Moving means less rent? She nodded. Either way, you deserve peace and fairness. She smiled. In January, our building lobby hosted a potluck the tenant council organized, and Aaron let us use folding tables and a warmer for soup. Neighbors brought chili, cornbread, dumplings, salad, and someone made brownies that tasted like childhood. Aaron stayed on the edges, making sure the doors were secured and the trash was handled. When I offered him a plate, he thanked me and waited until the end to take a small serving, sitting for a few minutes with us before heading out to check a leak. Professional, also human. The two can share the same sentence. I felt grateful. Not long after, a neighbor on 3 had a birthday party that went late, and the complaint thread grew prickly. Aaron responded with calm, visited both doors, and set up quiet hours with consent from everyone involved. He sent a follow-up that did not shame anyone. He thanked the party host for sweeping the hall, and he thanked the neighbor who spoke up for noticing safety. Watching him handle small conflicts like that, I felt my crush evolve into something steadier. Admiration for the craft of care expressed as emails, door knocks, and measured steps. It taught me patience. Mrs. Green fell on the steps one icy morning, and I heard the commotion from my kitchen. By the time I got downstairs, Aaron had her on a chair with a blanket around her shoulders, waiting for the paramedics, holding her hand like it was the most natural job in the building. He kept her talking gently about her garden, about spring tulips, about the baseball team she loved. After they took her to the clinic, he posted an update and asked for volunteers to check on her cat. He did not order. That matters. It builds trust. As winter softened, he suggested a few shared planters in the courtyard, a small garden we could tend together. He posted sign-up sheets, and on a Saturday we met with gloves and little shovels. I planted basil and 3 tomato starters. Aaron planted rosemary and thyme, then handed me a packet of marigold seeds. For protection, he said, smiling. They keep pests away. The soil was cold, but the sun was warm on our backs. We talked about favorite soups, the best quiet streets for walking, and which birds liked our block. Nothing more. Enough somehow. We kept planting. Spring brought pink trees and a line of bikes chained to the railings like bright punctuation. I walked to work in a light jacket and noticed how the city looked kinder when you knew the names of the people in your building. At home, my lease deadline approached. I had to decide within 2 weeks. I lay awake, tracing the hairline cracks in the ceiling with my eyes and listening to the soft clink of the heater. Security matters. So does space to breathe financially. So does the quiet thrill of a possible second chance kept waiting. But waiting costs. Then a small surprise arrived by email at work. The library offered to expand my hours and let me do some cataloging from home, a quiet promotion that came with a little raise and a little flexibility. It would not cancel the increase, but it made my budget less tight. It also made me imagine moving to a smaller unit 5 blocks away, the one Joy had mentioned with morning light and creaky floors. I could choose affordability and still walk past my favorite coffee shop. I could choose space. I could choose patience. I considered carefully. Over days, thoughtfully. Before I decided, I asked Aaron if we could talk off-duty about boundaries. Nothing personal, just logistics. We met at the cafe 2 blocks away on his day off, sat near the window, and kept our voices low. If I transfer, I said, what is the timeline for any personal conversation? He folded his hands. Company policy is clear, he said. No dating current tenants. If you move out, I would still wait a respectful period, at least a month, and I would make sure someone else handles anything tied to your former lease. I exhaled. Thank you. Truly. That night, my decision finally stood up and asked to be heard. I emailed Joy and chose the smaller unit 5 blocks away. I could afford it with the new hours. I could keep my routines. And yes, it meant I would no longer be Aaron's tenant. But I decided it for my wallet and my breath first. I told myself that if nothing ever happened beyond friendship, the move would still be right. Joy wrote back with a timeline and a gracious tone. Aaron sent a short note, copied to her, offering help with logistics. Professional always, and steady. In the weeks before the move, I donated books, packed boxes, and labeled everything with neat black letters. Aaron posted a moving day schedule for the elevator and made sure I had a slot, then stepped back. He offered a dolly and extra blankets, checked the hallway for obstacles, and let me do the rest. We spoke in short sentences. Thank you. You are welcome. Good luck with the new place. I hope it fits. It felt like 2 adults respecting both logistics and the heartbeat under them. That is a grown-up kind of romance, too. Quiet, careful, real. On the final week, Joy sent a colleague named Marco to do my walkthrough inspection. He was friendly, pointed out where to wipe baseboards, and laughed when I showed him the cupboard that never opened without a nudge from a spoon. Aaron stayed off the floor that hour by plan. When I handed Marco the keys, I felt a tremble I could not completely hide. Leaving a home, even for a good reason, pulls at the thread of you. You did well here, Marco said kindly. No charges today. I thanked him and took a breath, then stepped forward. Moving day came with a mist that turned every box into a soft rectangle with small dark corners. Harper brought muffins and tape. A neighbor lent me a hand truck. As we loaded the last things, Aaron stood by the door, making sure the lobby rug stayed dry and the fire exit clear. He caught my eye and lifted his hand in a simple wave. I waved back and felt that wave carry a whole paragraph we had not written yet. See you around, he called. See you, I answered, carrying my plants like tucked-in passengers. Careful, hopeful, ready. My new place faced east, with morning light that made my kitchen glow like coffee cream. The floors creaked a little. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and somebody's toast. I hung my coat by the door, set the plants on the ledge, and walked through the empty rooms, speaking to them like skittish animals. Home is a conversation you learn by trying. I spent the first night half awake, listening for new rhythms. In the morning, I made oatmeal and watched the sun slide over the neighboring roofs. I felt tender. I felt like beginning. Hope sat beside me. 3 days after my move, I received a text from a new number. This is Aaron, it read. Checking in to see if the move went as smoothly as possible. No response needed. Sending good wishes. I smiled at the ceiling. I waited until the end of the month to reply, which is the promise we made. New place feels kindly, I wrote. Thanks for the good stewardship back there. He sent a small reply. Glad you are settled. Would you like to meet for coffee next week? My heart said yes before my thumbs did. I breathed, then answered. We met at a bookstore cafe near the university, a place with creaky floors and friendly baristas who steam milk like they are humming. We ordered tea and held the warmth in our hands like permission. Thank you for being careful, I said. He nodded. Thank you for giving me room to be. We spoke about the months since he arrived, about my move, about his days. He told me he was taking classes at night to finish a certification in property management. I want to do this right, he said. For people. For myself. His honesty steadied something fragile. After tea, we walked toward the water, jackets zipped against a shy breeze. He told me about his mom's garden, about the way rosemary keeps its scent through winter. I told him about my job, about the boy who needed a book about trains and left hugging it like a pillow. At the pier, we leaned on the rail and watched a ferry move like a slow whale. May I hold your hand? He asked. Yes, I said, surprised by my own calm. When we kissed, it was gentle, like setting down a glass carefully. Present, tender, fully consented, beautiful. In the weeks that followed, we set an easy pace. Wednesday dinners after my late shift. Saturday morning walks at the farmer's market where we learned which vendor quietly slipped extra berries to regulars. We talked about everything and also about nothing, like which socks are impossible to keep in pairs. He kept work stories general, never about tenants in detail. I appreciated that boundary like a fence you paint together and agree not to climb. He asked if I wanted him to meet Harper, and I said yes. We ate pizza, laughed, and felt simple, like something finally easy. One afternoon in early summer, he told me he had asked to transfer to another building across town. It is not required, he said, but I want to remove even the echo of a conflict. I heard the cost in his voice. Changes work for managers, too. I support that, I said. Only if it feels right for you. He nodded. A month later, he started at a brick building near Green Lake, biking to work with a helmet that made him look younger. He sent a note to our old building, thanking people for the season. He waved. Even with the distance, a rumor floated back from the old building through a neighbor who shopped at the same market. Is it true you dated the manager? She asked me, kindly curious. My cheeks warmed. We waited until I moved, I said. He transferred too. She nodded, approving. That seems right. I realized rumors are just stories without enough facts. So I told the truth in small, simple sentences whenever it surfaced. We were adults. We cared about fairness. We kept boundaries first. The rumor quieted like a kettle lifted off the flame before boiling. It never returned loudly. In late summer, Aaron asked if I would like to meet his mom. We drove to her house in Shoreline, a small rambler with wind chimes and a vegetable bed that looked busy even at rest. She had his eyes. She had his way of pausing before a joke, letting the air prepare. We picked tomatoes, ate sandwiches, and told stories about college that made her shake her head fondly. She asked about my work and listened like it mattered. As we left, she hugged me and whispered, "Take care of each other." I promised I would. It felt good. Later that fall, Aaron met my sister and her husband when they passed through town with their station wagon filled with camping gear. We ate dinner at a diner with red booths and pie that tasted like November. My sister is kind and direct. So how did you two meet again? She asked, eyebrows lifted. I told the truth. He managed my building, I said. We waited, then we dated. She studied us for a heartbeat, then nodded. Sounds like adults. We paid the bill, split a slice of apple, and walked out into crisp air. Leaves drifted like notes. We kept our own lives even as we braided them gently together. He had class 2 nights a week, and I had story time and evening shifts. We let each other rest. We cooked simple meals, washed dishes side by side, and treated the table like a stage for small kindnesses. Sometimes we talked about what home means. For him, it meant steady schedules and knowing where the tools were kept. For me, it meant sunlight on the curtains and enough quiet to hear my thoughts. For both of us, it meant choosing each other every day. Calm, steady, glad. In October, a neighbor on my new floor lost her small dog when a door blew open in the wind. I saw the flyer and texted Aaron, who happened to be off that day. He showed up anyway, in jeans and a hoodie, and we walked the blocks with flashlights, calling softly, checking under porches and behind bins. We asked folks at the deli, the dry cleaner, the cafe, and left our numbers. After 2 hours, we heard a tiny bark near a community garden. The little dog shivered under a bench. We returned him, relieved and grinning. Teamwork works. That night, we made soup and ate it leaning against my small counter, socks warm, shoulders touching. "What do you want for the future?" he asked, like a person setting a project plan gently on a table. I told him I wanted steady work, enough savings for bad weather, a couch that guests do not sink into, and trips by train. He told me he wanted to keep learning, to grow gardens, to be the person who listens and also asks for help. We did not make grand promises. We promised to keep asking these questions, together, without rushing, ever. A year after the lobby sign announced him, we celebrated with a picnic near Green Lake under a maple that made yellow light feel liquid. We ate sandwiches and apples and watched joggers circle like planets on a polite orbit. "Do you remember the first day?" he asked. I laughed. "My brain forgot how to hold mail," he smiled. "Mine forgot how to hold a clipboard." We grew quiet for a moment, grateful for what we had managed with care. I took his hand and let the maples write their soft code across our joined shadows. It felt like arrival. I joined the tenant council at my new building that fall, showing up with printed agendas and a tin of cookies, listening more than speaking at first. We organized a safety night where a fire captain answered questions and showed us how to check smoke detectors. Aaron did not attend, of course, but he donated some lanterns through his new building's community fund, quietly, with no note attached. People kept asking who thought of the lanterns. I said a friend. The council made me feel useful. Paying attention is a form of love, too. I kept learning. Glad, engaged, grounded. By winter, we began wondering if we might find a place together in the next year. Nothing grand, just a sturdy 2-bedroom with light and a corner for plants. We sat with a notebook and wrote down numbers, talked about what we could afford without fear, and who would handle which bills. We agreed to rent, not buy for now. We agreed to revisit the conversation every season. It felt like a team choosing a route on a map. Not dramatic, careful, hopeful. We wanted to make a home with room for our separate chairs. And our shared table. Spring came again, and with it a vacancy in a tree-lined street near the park, owned by a different company. We filled out applications, sent references, and waited like kids before a school play. When we got the call, we danced in my kitchen among the spoons. On moving day, friends carried boxes, and we set a plant on every sill. We wrote our names on the mailbox together and felt the ink settle like truth. That night, we toasted with tea. We talked about rules we kept on purpose. Love and respect build beams. They hold roofs up. So now, when I pass our hallway mirror with 2 coats on the hooks and grocery lists tucked behind a magnet, I think about that first day in the lobby when my heartbeat ran ahead of my feet. I smile. I remind myself that desire is not a plan until you pair it with care, and care takes time. We chose time. We chose gentleness. We chose to be brave in the quiet ways that make a life. Today, our marigolds bloom again in new planters. We water them together and watch them guard what we built. Bright, steady hours,